meditation of our hearts, that we might find favor in your sight.
Amen.
The lost and the found at a convention center or at a school or even a church often holds many treasures. I know the really good stuff, like that $100 bill that just slipped from your pocket, or the iPhone that you can't find. Those things are normally set aside, and we have to prove they're ours in order to get those treasures returned. Yet, when an item is returned to the owner and has become found, there is joy, there is wonder, there's thanksgiving, and there's normally a good story all behind it. I imagine we become like the woman with the lost coin that we heard about in Luke's gospel today. Every time we can't find our glasses or our car keys or our wallet or our pocketbook or our paycheck that we swear we put right here, and we stop everything to seek what is missing. And then we rejoice when it is found, or we remain so disappointed if our search needs to continue. Even a game of hide and seek can be a lot of fun if you are the one that is found. Now, I'm not thinking about a person who is it. You all know what I mean by that? We were kids, whoever was the seeker was it, Lori was it, Dave was it, Jody was it. But if you're the one hiding, it's kind of nice to be found not by the person who's it, but when your best friend finds your crafty hiding space and says, "Can I hide with you?" Certainly, two being stealthily together is better than just being one by ourselves. And I would bet that that lost sheep that left its flock of 99 would have really liked to have had some company. One of the stories I heard about being found came from the blessing of the animals a few years ago when we were still doing them in our St. Francis garden here at St. Matthew's. The owner came of a little black dog with a great big white star on its chest. And she said to me, "This little dog found me. I was going through a very terrible time and my whole world was upside down. And this little creature wandered into my backyard. I picked her up, and I soon realized that she was a gift from God." The dog owner paused for a second, and then she said, "I was found, and I came to give thanks." But being found all depends on who is looking. Certainly, a lost sheep does not want to be found by a wolf. And Jews certainly didn't want to be found by the Nazis, as Anne Frank's diary tells us when she stayed hidden. And a woman without her headscarf doesn't want to be found if you're in Taliban country. And who becomes found can become complicated. Homeless people don't like to be found. Last November, a New York City policeman came across a homeless man. It was the beginning of winter, and he didn't have any shoes. The policeman asked him his shoe size, and then went to the local store and bought him a brand new pair of thermal boots and thermal socks. A few weeks later, the man was found once again, shoeless again. He explained, "I hid my boots. I didn't want other people to take my boots. I was afraid that they would harm me if they saw them and stole them." But the found man was now exposed. His story and his picture went all over the newspapers and all over the internet, and it was finally found out that he was a professional beggar. And his shoelessness was his presentation, his calling card in order to get donations. So disappointing. But don't be tempted by the story. If either you or I were homeless and barefoot on the street, I am sure we would all agree that we would want to be found by that policeman in the city streets of New York. Jesus' good news which I would rather call this day more than good news, but wonderful news or best news, is this parable is not meant for just one as if they were the black sheep that has come home, but rather for that spectrum of all human hearts. God is shepherd, and God is woman looking for a lost, God is shepherd looking for a lost coin, and God is woman, got that backwards. God is shepherd looking for a lost sheep, or God is woman looking for the lost coin, stands in the midst of those willing to be found and counted. None of us can hide from God, says the psalmist. You know my coming out and my going in. One is much more apt to successfully hide from our own selves than we could ever hide from God. God who is all-knowing and all-powerful, endlessly loving, continually searching. And even in our reading today from Jeremiah, where Israel is experiencing God's hot wind of judgment, for all of them they are people skilled in doing evil rather than having to have done good. But God also promises that it's not the full end. God waits for those who will to be found. He waits for us to start again. When Jesus tells his parable of this lost sheep, the lost coin, the found coin, he tells it to everyone. At the top of the crowd's pecking order are the Pharisees and the scribes, who are willingly visible and well known in the community. And at the bottom of the pecking order are the despicable tax collectors, who make themselves only visible when they come in to feed on the people, collecting the taxes and taking the bribe on top of it, and then they scatter back into the recesses of the city's dark alleys. And in between those folks, the Pharisees who are visible and the tax collectors who are almost invisible, is the crowd who Luke calls the sinners. And he describes them as being ordinary. Ordinary as one sheep in a flock, as ordinary as one coin and a purse of coins. To be found is to accept God's mercy. To be found is to rise up and join the merciful. It takes time to embrace both. The first, accepting God's mercy, brings us into relationship with God, and the other, being merciful, calls us into relationship with our fellow man in God's name. In some of God's work, as the found, is easier than other work. Work such as doing one thing of kindness, of finding those lost keys, the lost glasses, the lost pocketbook, and returning them to the lost and found. Sometimes the work is more difficult, like meeting a new friend in a high-stakes game of hide-go-and-seek. For instance, when one is hiding a refugee at a crafty place, so neither they nor you get caught. But the stakes are always high. And that's why there is always rejoicing with the angels in heaven for each of the sinners that is swept up by God's broom, like a shiny coin, and pays for the party of rejoicing, or like that sheep that is carried home on the shepherd's shoulders, completing the flock of God's kingdom. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.